testing status. So 84% of the department is in the vaccine mandate portal. 35 members of the department are in no pay status. 35 are in no pay status. Of the 84% that's in the portal, 78.8 are vaccinated. So 84% in the portal, 78.8% of that number is vaccinated, and 35 members are in no pay status. Got it? Okay, good. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of Waukesha, Wisconsin, after Sunday night's horrific incident during what should have been a joyous celebration of the holidays. I also want to extend my condolences to the family, friends, and co-workers of the 2 Chicago police officers we lost over the weekend, one to an apparent suicide and another to natural causes. So keep them and their families and co-workers in your prayers, please. These last 18 months have been extremely difficult, as we all know, the most challenging time to be a police officer in decades, if not ever. Yet the men and women of the Chicago Police Department continue to serve this city with honor, courage, and selflessness at great personal risk. Last night is an example of that great personal risk. 2 more of our Chicago police officers were shot at, bringing the total number of Chicago police officers shot at or shot so far in 2021 to an incredible 64 officers shot at or shot. And I just want to remind you, after 2020's 79 officers shot at or shot, bringing the total over the last 18 months or so to 143 Chicago police officers shot at or shot. Thank God, last night incidents, no officers were struck. So far this year, 14 officers, though, have been struck by gunfire. And as we know, we lost Officer Ella French due to a murder by a suspect in possession of illegally possessed gun. As you know, 2020, we had 10 officers shot. So this year, we have already surpassed last year's 10 officers shot, with 14 officers hit by gunfire this year. In just a brief description, Chief Dinahan will go into more details, but a brief description of last night's events. In the 11th district, that officer who was shot at happened around 8:30 p.m. when they sought to question an individual in the 200 block of North Kochner. The individual fled on foot. The officers pursued, and they were fired upon by the offender. One officer returned fire, striking the offender in the leg. The offender is a convicted felon. He was transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. A weapon was recovered on scene, one of 169 guns recovered over the weekend. That's bringing the total number of guns recovered over the weekend to 10,982 guns. That's a 12% increase over this same period in 2020, on pace to recover more guns from the streets of Chicago that were illegally possessed on record. On pace to recover more guns on record. And let me just, as an aside, I mentioned Ella's murder. She, as you know, was on a traffic stop. An offender was armed with an illegally possessed gun, shot her, killing her, and seriously wounding her partner. Since that incident, the brave men and women of Chicago Police Department have recovered an additional 4,000 guns since that incident. So we had around 8,000 guns recovered at that point in August. We've recovered an additional 4,000 guns. You would think we have some kind of pullback. Officers say, that's too dangerous, or we don't have enough support, why risk our lives? But we recovered an additional 4,000 guns since that incident. I think it just highlights the bravery and courage our officers have exhibited throughout this year and last year, and just speaks to the overall bravery and courage our officers have on this department. We've made over 5,000 arrests. That's an 8% increase over that same period since 2020 for illegally possessing a gun. So without question, our officers are doing their job. Without question, they're risking everything to serve. And without question, they are doing all they can to protect the people of this great city. And we are, and we will continue to be, relentless in our pursuit of guns, gangs, and drugs. Year to date, our criminal networks division has closed 49 criminal conspiracy cases. Those are gang and narcotics groups who are either trafficking in narcotics and/or guns. That has yielded, those 49 closed cases of 2021 of criminal networks, gangs, and narcotics, 6,300 kilos of narcotics with an estimated street value of $419 million. We've also seized from these criminal networks, these gangs and narcotic criminal networks, $25 million in U.S. currency. I'll go through that one more time. We've closed out 49 criminal conspiracies that involve gangs and narcotics groups. That has yielded 6,300 kilos of narcotics with an estimated street value of $419 million, along with $25 million in U.S. currency. And let me go through a couple of arrests, notable arrests over this past week. An offender, a 39-year-old Albert Burrage, B-U-R-A-G-E, he was charged with felony count of attempted first-degree murder, felony count of aggravated battery to a peace officer, and a felony count of aggravated battery to a transit employee. Mr. Burrage was arrested on November 14th after being identified as an offender who moments before stabbed a 44-year-old CTA employee on the train platform in the 300 block of South Dearborn. He then struck a Chicago police officer multiple times with a blunt object before being placed into custody. Next, 36-year-old Nakia Simbler is charged with one felony count of attempted first-degree murder and one felony count of aggravated battery using a deadly weapon. Ms. Simbler was arrested by Chicago police officers and the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force on November 15th, after being identified as the offender who stabbed a 34-year-old male multiple times in the 600 block of East 37th Street. Next, the arrest of 28-year-old Teshwan Bowler, that's B-O-L-E-R, Teshwan, T-E-S-H-A-W-N, was arrested for two felony counts of attempted first-degree murder, one felony count of aggravated battery discharging a firearm, and one felony count of home invasion discharging a firearm, and one felony count of armed robbery discharging a firearm. Teshwan Bowler was arrested on November 16th after being identified as the offender who entered a residence in the 6800 block of South Crandon and opened fire, striking a 28-year-old male. A 26-year-old female victim was also shot at, but was not injured. Another offender, 39-year-old Titania Finley, that's T-I-T-A-N-I-A, Finley, charged with one felony count of first-degree murder, one felony count of aggravated battery using a deadly weapon, and one felony count of aggravated battery causing great bodily harm. Ms. Finley was arrested on November 18th after being identified as the offender who struck 27-year-old female victim multiple times with a baseball bat on August 13, 2021 in the 300 block of North Central. 18-year-old Norian Wilson, that's N-O-A-R-I-A-N, Wilson, was charged with one felony count of aggravated vehicular hijacking with a firearm, one felony count of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, and various traffic offenses. Wilson was arrested on November 14th, being identified as the offender who carjacked a 32-year-old female on November 10th in the 66600 block of South Wabash. A few more, and I just want to remind you, this is just this past week. This is 1 week's of work. A 15-year-old juvenile offender was arrested and charged with felony count of aggravated vehicular hijacking with a firearm, 1 misdemeanor count of possessing ammunition without a valid FOID card. A 15-year-old juvenile was arrested on November 17th after being identified as the offender who carjacked a 45-year-old female the previous day in the 4400 block of South Ashland Avenue. Another 17-year-old juvenile female offender was charged with aggravated battery causing great bodily harm. This juvenile female offender was arrested on November 18th, minutes after using a knife to cut the face of a 30-year-old female while in the 200 block of South State Street on the CTA platform. Narcotics arrest and gang arrest. We, on November 15th, seized 843 grams this past week of cocaine, street value $100,000. We also, on November 17th, seized over 2,000 grams of cocaine, estimated street value $250,000, along with a handgun and ammunition, and two offenders were placed in custody. One of those offenders was a felon in possession of a weapon. And our gang division targeted the Latin Kings gang. And this targeted investigation yielded over $793,000 of street value illegal narcotics, a firearm being seized, and the team continues to investigate the Latin Kings, linking them to narcotics and any other crimes associated with this incident. The last two, on November 16th, a follow-up to a narcotics investigation led to the seizure of a firearm and narcotics with an estimated street value of $430,000. And then again on November 20th, officers working a special mission initiated an investigatory stop in the 5400 block of West Madison and subsequently recovered a .40 caliber firearm. This person arrested with this firearm was a documented new breed gang member, and he's in custody and charged with felony charges approved for an armed habitual criminal. And before I come back, before I pass it on to Chief Dinahan and Chief McDermott, we also had a notable community engagement. We had about 100 kids from the West Side Boys and Girls Club at Jordan Family Boys and Girls Club and Little Village Boys and Girls Club, along with some of our explorers. All these kids, all 100 kids, were from the West Side. We rented out one of the theaters at the AMC and premiered King Richard, the story of Serena and Venus Williams' dad, for the kids. They all enjoyed time away from their home and in a theater having fun like kids should do. But they really enjoyed the movie, and so did I, by the way. With that, we'll turn it over to Chief Dinahan for a more detailed update on the police-involved shooting, along with a couple of break-ins we had at both Neiman Marcus and at a GameStop over the weekend. Thanks.
Okay, good morning. And as the superintendent mentioned, there's somebody in custody for this police-involved shooting incident in the 11th District. The detectives are still investigating, so it's an ongoing investigation. We're working with the state's attorney's office to seek charges. But as the superintendent mentioned, the officers were working the 11th District. They observed this individual. He was near a vehicle. The vehicle light was on. When they approached the individual for an interview, he fled. At that point, he turned and with a handgun, discharged his handgun at two of those officers, at which point one of the officers returned fire, striking him, and then he was eventually placed into custody and his weapon was recovered. So at this time, he's in custody and working with the state's attorney's office on seeking charges against that individual. And obviously, COPA is also working on the officer discharge part of the investigation. As the superintendent mentioned, we had an incident On the 19th of November at approximately 6:45 PM at 737 North Michigan, where about 18 offenders entered a store, and then they took approximately 20 handbags with an estimated value of about $60,000 and fled the scene. So the detectives worked on that incident. The following day, the detectives, officers actually from the 6th District did a remarkable job. They observed a vehicle that matched the description. The vehicle turned out to be stolen. They pulled that vehicle over. There's 2 juvenile offenders who fled. They placed 2 juveniles in custody, one of which had a handgun, and they recovered several stolen handbags from that vehicle. So that investigation, once again, is ongoing. Those particular juveniles are not charged in the actual incident that occurred at the store. We just still have a lot more investigation to do in ensuring that those bags were taken from that store, et cetera. As the superintendent mentioned, there was another incident at the 8500 block of South Cottage Grove on the 19th of November at approximately 5:45 PM, where a very similar incident, a large group of individuals broke the window to a GameStop. Several of those people entered and removed items. Officers responded immediately. A sergeant did a remarkable job. He observed 2 of the individuals get into a car and flee. The sergeant followed that car until it was no longer safe to follow that vehicle. And the detectives, along with the sergeant, have recovered that vehicle, and once again, an ongoing investigation. But due to the sergeant's immediate response and just great work is the reason that we were able to recover that vehicle and continuing that investigation. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chief McDermott for some other information on.
Morning, everybody. In the weeks prior to the Rittenhouse verdict, the department conducted multiple emergency mobilization drills. The emergency mobilization plan consists of sending a predetermined number of cars to fixed posts in the downtown area. On Friday, November 19th, there was an incident in the 6th District involving a small caravan. In order to be proactive, we implemented our emergency mobilization plan. The city then decided to implement its full asset and infrastructure or retail corridor protection plan. The plan is a coordinated effort among all city agencies consistent with our all-hands-on-deck approach to solving crime. Assets from CDOT, Streets and Sanitation, the Department of Water, relieved CPD at their predetermined posts, and they were then staged at multiple retail corridors across the city. These assets are the department's eyes and ears on the ground and can assist us with closures when needed. The plan was in place on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In addition to the mobilization plan, the department was managing the tree lighting ceremony in Millennium Park, the Mag Mile Festival of Lights on Michigan Avenue, in addition to multiple protests across the city. As Thanksgiving and Black Friday approach, the department will continue to coordinate our resources to ensure a safe holiday season, not only in the downtown area, but in all neighborhoods across the city. I'd also like to personally thank all the members of our department who continue to do what we ask of them on a daily basis, and that their efforts do not go unnoticed. Thank you.
With that, we'll take just a few questions. Yes.
Can you talk about
Talk about the 60% that's not yet in the portal. It was, so 84% of the department members are in the portal, yes, 16%, and we anticipate closing that gap in the coming few days. Of course, you know, again, we've had a 3-step process to get our members in the portal. We began this process back when the mandate was implemented in October the 15th. I think the 19th was the first day. That following Monday, we were at 50% in the portal. So we've made tremendous progress with educating our members. There was quite a bit of misinformation coming from various sources that we had to do a lot of counseling individually to overcome the misinformation about the impacts of not being in the portal on their employment. But once we were able to do that, and we're continuing that, we believe we'll make up that 16% gap. Yeah, questions? Yeah.
So, once again, obviously a 14-year-old killed, extremely tragic incident. So obviously ongoing investigation, no major updates to speak about. The house had been shot at earlier that night, which kind of leads to the, obviously people were definitely want to target somebody inside that house, and the 14-year-old was by himself when he was shot. So either those offenders were targeting someone in that house or possibly specifically the 14-year-old due to the fact that he was by himself when he was shot. So very active and ongoing investigation, no major updates at this time. But once again, we always ask the help of the citizens in the community that are out there because somebody knows something, somebody saw something, and the detectives definitely need a lot of help with this particular case. And, once again, very tragic, a 14-year-old. So with any information, they can, CPD tip, or they can reach out to Area 2 Detective Division, but very active and ongoing investigation at this time.
No? Another question? All right, thank you all very much. Oh, yes, sorry, yes. So make sure I got the question right. Any update on the shooting outside Chinatown last Sunday? Is that the question? Around 1:30. Brendan, do you have anything on that? No. Can we get with you afterwards and update you on it? Don Terry is my comms director, and we'll make sure we give you an update for that shooting on Sunday in front of Chinatown. Thank you. Thank you all so much.